Imagine if you never had to worry about money in your business. There was always funds, there's always allocations, and at any point in time, you knew exactly where your business stood financially. Well, if that sounds appealing to you, then you're going to love this podcast. Here are a few things that we cover. The fastest way to become financially literate, how to never run out of money in your business, and how to ensure that your business is always profitable. Katie, welcome back to the Sideshow podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to this conversation. For you listeners and viewers out there that have been following the show for a while, you will remember Katie from an episode we did back in October of 2020, which was called Profit First for Tradies. Katie is the author of a book called Profit First for Tradies. And for you guys that are new to the show, Profit First might be a new thing to you. If you've been listening for a while, you would have heard me talk about it on repeat over and over again, and you're probably sick and tired of it. However, today I'm getting Katie on the show because she's going to help us with some of the foundational parts, well, maybe some of the obstacles that businesses may face when they are adopting Profit First or another financial management sort of system within their business. And if you guys don't have a financial management system in your business, I cannot rave enough about Profit First. It's been an absolute game changer for us, and we've got loads of our clients that are over there using it as well. Go and read Katie's book. It's available on Amazon. There'll be a link in the show notes, guys, to get over to basically a page on Katie's website where you'll be able to get access to the book, and we'll put some Amazon links and stuff in there as well. Katie, welcome back.
Thank you.
How's life been for you down in Sydney?
Eventful, which I think is kind of the theme for everybody's life over the last couple of years.
2 years, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we had a bit of a chat about it offline. I suppose there's been some businesses that have done quite well and progressed, and some businesses that have sort of felt the full force of the impact, which is a lot of it's been out of people's hands. But I think for the better part, a lot of businesses have used this as an opportunity to improve process and adopt things like financial management systems, into their business so that they can mitigate some of these downtime areas and, really navigate some of these obstacles that come when we head into crises. And I hate to break it to you guys, but there's going to be more. So you may as well get this dialed in.
Exactly. One thing that will not change is there will always be something that happens. There'll be obviously periods of good time, but there will certainly be periods of time where things are out of our control, and we can either just roll with it, or we can have systems and processes in place, particularly around your finances, which will see you not only get through it, but in many instances absolutely thrive, even when something not so fun has happened to you personally or to the business.
So, and for context, I just want to communicate to the listeners and viewers out there, I suppose, a bit about my story and background with Profit First, because I'm an ex-plumber. I have had no financial literacy whatsoever. I never had any mentoring or advisors in that space that I could rely on. And so it was really on my own accord to go and learn about, figure out a way to fix my business, because it was all over the place and I hated looking at financials. I really did. And although there was money coming in, I just really had no idea how to manage it. And so when I went looking for a financial management system and I stumbled across Profit First, I just saw it as like the light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought that the best way for me I could sit there and try and figure this out. For you guys that haven't read the book, go read the book. It'll make a lot more sense when you do, and read Katie's book for sure, because it's for tradies. But for me, it was a matter of, okay, well, how do I fast track this? Because I could spend 2 years trying to set this up and probably screw it up, or I can just get someone to set it up for me, which is what I did. And it was been the best thing we ever did. So I really encourage you guys, if you want to get more, and for context as well, guys, like no one expects you to know this stuff. Like, you've gone through TAFE, you learn how to swing hammers and climb ladders. You're not necessarily, at no point at TAFE do they actually teach you anything about financial management. So if you do want to become more financial literate and you want to get clarity around the numbers within your business, well, if you don't, you shouldn't be in business. And if you do, then I would recommend going to speak to someone like Katie who can really help you fast track these things, because it's an absolute game changer once you've got these things in play. And, for the last 2 years, for us, what it's meant is, even though through some of these pretty turbulent times, like we've never had issues with money or cash flow, like it's always been managed And so there's not many businesses that can say that, even crisis aside, like it's really important that you guys understand the power of what we're going to be talking here today. And again, you're not meant to know it. Like, we're here to give you a bit of a taste and help you try and understand some of the things. And Katie's here to try and help you guys relate to some of her case studies and things like that. But the point is, get started, go and get the information, take the next step, because the information is great, but it's useless unless you act on it. So I just can't encourage you guys enough to get out there and take action in this space.
And I've worked with hundreds of tradies over the last however many years, 5 years doing coaching, 10 plus years with my bookkeeping business. And out of that number, I would have had less than a handful of tradies that have come to me saying, oh, I love looking at my numbers, or yes, I've got some idea around this. Exactly as Matt said, nobody has taught you this. So please, and the amount of times that I hear, I'm just a dumb insert trade here, is probably 90%. And you're not. You've done your trade. You're very good at what you do. You're only not great at this because you've never been shown. Yeah. You've never been pointed in the right direction to learn about this. So it's not because you're not very smart with numbers. It's not because you might have left school early or you were bad at maths. It's none of those things. It's just because you haven't been given the framework to work with.
And here's the funny irony. Like, when I started this journey in the business, over 10 years ago or whatever, I fundamentally hated finance to the point where I would just consistently stick my head in the sand and, disregard it. In truth, I had terrible people in my corner. I had a shocking accountant. I had no bookkeeper. I didn't have any, there was no such thing as profit first. I didn't have a CFO. Like, I had none of these things back then. So I was really on my own. But looking, fast tracking now, 10 years down the road, like, I actually love sitting down and looking at my numbers each week and, allocating my accounts and doing all the stuff that we do, because it just brings complete clarity to where we currently stand. And then, rolling that out against budget and things like that, which we're not going to get into today, but, as your business progresses, there are things that you can continually bolt on to bring clarity into where you currently are and where you want to be. And so, I've said it a million times on the show, your role within your business will change as your business develops and as your business grows. And this is one of those things. And if you had told me 10 years ago that I was going to be the guy that actually liked looking at finances, I would have told you, you're freaking mad. But now I love me a profit and loss statement.
Because it means something to you now.
Well, yeah, you understand it, right? Like, it's, and I mean, and at the end of the day, there's nothing really more important than understanding the financials of your business. Oh. The great thing about Profit First is, like, the way that it's broken down into, call it buckets or whatever. There's always money there. Like, you're never really without money. So across departments and things like that, there's always allocation, which is just really refreshing. So, Katie, today we're going to talk a little bit about, like, a lot of people have heard me speak about this. I've had, loads of people on the show. We've had Craig Minter on the show a bunch of times. We've had Jackson Millen on the show. You've been on the show, but I suppose the purpose of this conversation is to help people get started, because it is overwhelming, especially if it's new to you. And there are a lot of people out there that are probably glazing over at this point in time and thinking, oh no, here we go again. But yeah, like, I suppose I really just want to communicate and help them understand that, like, what's involved in getting started, and some of the, maybe help them navigate some of the obstacles that you see day to day with trade businesses that are starting to adopt this philosophy and are starting to embrace this mindset around financial management.
The very first step that you need to take is just to decide that you're going to do something different to how you're already doing it. If what you're doing isn't working, let's not stick at it, but also let's not look at the whole picture and get completely overwhelmed and don't do anything at all, because that's obviously not helpful to you or your business. And my key suggestion is to just take one step at a time. So, read the book, listen to some podcasts, have a look at your bank accounts if you're so inclined, but just do one thing at a time. And the biggest piece of feedback I get from clients is, I wish I had started sooner. Yeah. Like, it's not as hard as I thought, and I wish I would have started sooner. We only get better. We can only improve on things if we improve our education around it. And for me, when I work with my clients, it's vital that I teach them the framework so that when they're not working with me anymore, they can still work with it from a day-to-day basis without having any troubles with it.
Sure.
And it is a really simple framework that can be overcomplicated because it is really simple. And that's what I see when clients have attempted to do it themselves. They come back to me and have a bit of a chat, and they've tried to implement, either all the steps, or they've gone from step 1 to 3 to 7 to 15 to 23 and have completely overwhelmed themselves. So it's just a matter of getting started, like make that decision to get started and know that you're not going to implement everything. It's all going to be up and running tomorrow or even next week or even in a month's time. But it's just that decision to, I'm going to do this one thing, then I'm going to do the next thing and the next. And it's just like building a house. If you don't get the foundations of this right, you can continue to build the house, and the house might look great for a little while. Eventually, it's going to start to get some cracks, and depending on how bad those foundations are, it's going to start to fall down. That might be in 12 months, it might be in 3 years, whatever it may be. But it's really, really important to spend that time on the foundations to have the long-term success and ease with first.
One thing that I see, Katie, as well, and like there'd be a lot of people out there that'd be watching this going, well, I don't have a problem with my financials, everything's fine. And it's sort of that whole, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of mentality. And we see it over in the marketing space all the time. Oh, we're busy, we're super, we're fine. We don't need marketing, we don't need this, whatever. I don't need a new website. I'm like, okay, fine. But like, and you see it a lot with technology as well, right? The old school ways of operating when there's, technologies and apps and programs and things around that can streamline, make these things just run so much better. And so what you're currently doing might be working, but I would encourage you just to take the blinkers off for a little bit and look into other ways of doing something that it might already be working, because chances are there are better ways for it to work. And as an example, like a good friend of mine and a client of ours, his wife's an accountant, a chartered accountant. And he was telling me, we were out for dinner the other night, and he was telling me how I was talking to him about how great it was, because on the first day of the month, every single time without fail, I open my email, I've got all my reports from my bookkeepers with my profit and loss, my balance statements, everything's just basically sitting there in my inbox for me to review. And he's sitting there going, he goes, we are literally months behind. And I'm like, how's that possible? Like, your wife's the accountant, the bookkeeper. And he's like, exactly. And so when I had this conversation with her, and I was saying, we run profit first. And she's like, what's that? And I'm like, okay. So like the point is, like, she's a highly qualified, very skilled, trained professional, but there is a better way for them to operate than what she currently knows about. And when I was explaining to them, we never have to worry about, they got hit with this huge tax bill. And I'm like, we never have to worry about that ever, because there's always allocation for tax, and it doesn't matter how much we make or how much we're going to owe, it's always allocated because it's based on percentages. She's like, it was just this paradigm shift for her, And so anyway, the point is, even if you think something is working, I would encourage you to go and have a look at other ways of doing something, because chances are it will be a revelation for you, which will not only save you a lot of grief, it could save you a lot of money.
I always say to clients, if Profit First doesn't work, note, I've never worked with anyone that it hasn't worked for, but if it doesn't work for you, you can always go back to what you're doing. Yeah. So there's no harm in trying. But that story is so common. People are often blown away when I talk. As I said, I've got a bookkeeping business as well. So we are always up to date every week with all our clients. So come into the month, end of the quarter, end of financial year, we actually don't have a rush in our business. Our clients get all their documentation within a couple of days of the end of the month finishing, the end of the quarter, the end of the year. And people just don't understand how that's possible. And it's because we have systems and processes in place to make sure that we capture the information. So we use a receipt management system. We use HubDoc, but there is others. So they send us through all their invoices for all their expenses. we make sure we use Xero and HubDoc to its maximum efficiency so that we can get all that information to the client, because there's no point having information that's 3 months old, 2 months old, 12 months old. You can't make good decisions that way.
Yeah.
And when I talk about the foundations, that's part of it. It's getting your bookkeeping up and running in a way that makes you smile rather than cringe, and that you're only ever a couple of days behind.
Yeah.
Like, you should only ever be a couple of days behind in your bookkeeping. For example, if it's done on a Thursday, then it's, Monday next week, you're just going to have those couple of days. That's as far behind as you should be. And when you've got that step in place, that then also makes Profit First much easier, because you're looking at your figures that are actual numbers, exactly what's happening now, not what has happened a week, 6 months, 12 months down the track.
I mean, and we talk about how easy it makes Profit First, but I mean, having a good bookkeeper in place, the amount of money it can save you on accounting fees, it's just mind-boggling. So I cannot just recommend getting a good, and again, getting a good bookkeeper, because I've had some bad ones in the past too, right? So you got to find the right ones. But like, again,
and I always talk about your financial team and building that financial team who will work together for you as a business owner. So we work for you to help you achieve whatever your goals are in your business and your personal life. I insist that we have a connection with the client's accountant. We always reach out. We always keep them involved. In some cases, they don't want to be involved back. We're persistent because we all have to work together. Your tax accountant is going to be your tax specialist. Your bookkeeper is going to be your bookkeeping and get that all up to date. And then if we're doing Profit First as well, we all have to work together. We can all absolutely work together really easily and simply. It doesn't have to be stressful. And I always say to the client, how do you like your accountant, or how do you like your bookkeeper? And if you have to pause before you answer that question to me, that is a really good indication that maybe it's time to look for somebody else. But what I always say first is, before you look for somebody else, get really clear on what it is that you want from that bookkeeper or accountant. And sometimes you don't know what you want. So it might be simple things like, I want them to communicate quickly to me. Like, I want them to reply to an email within 2 days, or I want them to return a phone call. Start with those, because sometimes you don't know technically if they are good or bad, but there are things that are non-negotiables for you, and start there and see if they can improve in that area.
Sure.
Because sometimes they don't even know that you want to talk to them every quarter because you've never told them.
So it's interesting because, again, like as you sort of said before, and I agree, like in most cases, people don't, especially if you've, like my background where you had a shocking run with accountants and bookkeepers, like all I really wanted was stuff to work. Like, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know, I mean, now I know, like, from what a bookkeeper, what I expect, and they know. But back then I didn't. So what are some of those things when you're talking about bookkeeping? What are some of the fundamental breakdowns that you see with people that with bookkeepers out there that are not doing what they should be doing? So you guys out there that are watching this, listening to this, take note here, because these are questions you should be asking.
So my bookkeeping business, Efficient Tradie Bookkeeping, clearly we are very focused on efficiencies and using tech to its max capacity. Not all bookkeepers are like that. That does not make them bad. It does not necessarily make them any better or worse than me. It just makes them different. Now, if you're the type of business who wants to make use of efficiencies within your business, then that's something to look at. If a bookkeeper is doing data entry, for example, entering your bills into the system, that can go. I haven't done data entry in my business in 10 years.
I suppose the point of that is, though, essentially, like, we're doing data entry, or we're using technology so that we can get the information into the system as quick as we can, so we can generate reports and get our accounts up to date, right? So
correct.
I guess the question really is, well, do I have a report coming through every Monday, the the first Monday of every month, telling me exactly where my accounts are at with profit and loss, with balance statements, with all that kind of stuff.
And also, if you've got a bookkeeper who's spending time on data entry, for example, then when there is an app that can replace that process, now, absolutely, it is not 100% perfect, and there's some setup and there's some ongoing work that needs to be done. But for the large portion of it, data entry can be removed. For them, so for my bookkeepers in my business, we then are able to focus on making sure the reports are out to them, making sure, having training sessions with my clients to help them understand the report, because you don't just sit down and learn about a profit and loss and a balance sheet once and then it's all like fabulous. It's new. We need to like teach you and educate you over time. So it allows my team and myself more time to do the things in the business that are actually going to educate and improve your business rather than just data enter. So again, it's not wrong if that's what they're doing, but it's just not as quick for what most need. And once you've made that efficiency step, then you're going to be able to get your reports quicker. Often there is a hold up from the tradies' point of view that they haven't provided some information. If that is something that's annoying to you, then I would investigate with my client and be like, okay, hey, what don't you like about that? What's stopping you from getting us that information through the app as quick as possible, or updating us with certain things? And then we'd find out what's annoying for them and figure out a better way for it. The whole point of setting up your foundations correctly is making sure that it's actually fun. Like, it can absolutely be fun. It doesn't have to be. If you have to do something and you're like, oh, that's your indicator to put that on a list and speak to whoever you need to speak to and find a better way to do it. It's exactly what I tell my clients, because I don't know what their perspective is. So I'm constantly just getting things through. Oh, this was a bit annoying. Okay, cool. Let's try it this way. Because we want it to be fun. When it's fun, we're going to do it. When we're going to do it, we're going to look at our reports, we're going to action them, and everything builds from there.
So I'd say, going back to the things that you should be expected to have done from your bookkeeping, for you guys out there that are tuning in, like, I always want to make sure my reports are in the beginning of the month. So that always happens. I also want my bookkeeper sends me every month what my net profit for the business is as a cash figure and as a percentage, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're only managing your cash flow percentage, because that might not your cash flow dollar your net profit figure, because if your percentage isn't improving with it, or at least maintaining, like, your net profit figure can dollar value can increase, but your percentage can decrease, which means essentially it's going backwards, right? So you've got to make sure you understand both of those. All of my accounts are always fully reconciled. They're actually reconciled weekly, but like at the end of the month, they're always reconciled. So we can see, like, our managed, like, the receivables and everything are up to date. And I mean, we've got us leeway because of our billing system, which sort of has like a 30-day allocation either side. But anyway, these are the things we expect. So they know now every month Matt's going to ask me for these things. So they just send it. I don't have to ask them for anything. The accountant's always CC'd into that email so that he knows what's happening. So come the time when we're doing BAS and we're doing, it comes tax time and that kind of thing, like, everyone's pretty well on the same page. And typically it gets streamlined pretty quickly. So in the situation where we're currently at the moment, we're coming into the new year. We could, we need to have our accounts. All the business accounts need to be finalized as quick as we can, because we've got to get some debt lending and stuff from the banks and this kind of stuff. It's all ready to go. Like, it's basically bring the new year, submit, done, and I think I've been in that situation in the past where I've had to, I've been waiting. I've got notifications, the ATO, saying you need to lodge your tax return, and I'm like, what am I paying my accountant for? That was 2 years ago, at which point you can't even remember half the shit that you've got on your ledger. So they're the things, guys. If you haven't got those things dialed in from your bookkeeper, and I'm sure there's more, but from my experience, like, definitely having everything reconciled, definitely having your reports sent through on time each month. And then for me, net profit as a dollar value and net profit as a percentage value, like, they're the things that I ask for. You can't really go too far wrong with those.
No, and you just, just start. If some of those things don't make any sense to you right now, just ask that you get an email every month or every week or every month when your accounts have been reconciled, because what that should then allow you to do when you look at your dashboard, it should, the figures that are your outstanding invoices and your outstanding bills, that should be correct if all your accounts have been reconciled. So you can just start there. If some of those reports are not, not helpful to you right now, just take one little step at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself.
So what are some of the things that you, like the red flags that you see within businesses that don't have financial management systems in place?
Very stressed business owner, usually, or reverse, a very relaxed business owner who is just head so far in the sand in complete denial. I often
in denial, or is it ignorance? Because you see sometimes, I mean, I see it all the time. People are like, oh yeah, we've got to go buy we just bought a new ute because the end of the financial year. And it's like, oh my God.
I hate that. It's like all those end of financial year ads drive me crazy. I think denial and ignorance, and we've always done it this way. We're all right. We've always done it this way. Okay, but things aren't great. And what I see a lot of as well is, but my mate Ben and Steve and Rob, they're all doing it this way. That doesn't make it right. So to just, again, be conscious of making the changes. Red flags, often people need to get finance. Then all of a sudden I'll get a bookkeeping inquiry, for example. They're like, oh, I need 9 months worth of or 12 months worth of bookkeeping up to date. I need it now and I've got to do it now. I've got to do it now. And it's because they need finance, or they've just found this truck or bike or car or property or something that they, and often have put a deposit on already. And so there's this mad rush to get their bookkeeping up to date for their finance. So that's always really stressful for them and unnecessary. I do see a little bit of, like you mentioned, the tax not being completed, and then the end of financial year reconciliation for family payments, like any Centrelinky type payments for kids. Then there's a mad rush. We've got to get this done, because if we don't, we have to repay everything that we've received. So there's lots of little things that creep up over the course of time that just don't need to. It can just all be nice and smooth and easy if you get those foundations right. And when you run profit first in your business, it makes it easier to keep the foundations right. It makes it easier to see if, come into financial year, if you want to buy that Makita tool pack or that whatever, you can actually see, do I have money in this operating expenses account or not? Yes, I do. Is it enough to cover what I've got to pay, this month? Yes, it is. Okay. Do I have extra? Yes, I do. Okay, then I can afford that thing, that pack or that whatever. Now, I know that's not as fun as just going out and buying the bloody tool pack, but it's going to save you so much stress than just putting your head in the sand and getting out there and doing things.
And the other thing, I suppose, as well, like you look at, so one thing I will say for sure, and I say this with hand on heart, like the one good thing, if anything else, about using profit first, I mean, there's been so many serendipities, but one of them for sure, one of the big ones, was once you sort of understand the process and you understand the model, you can apply that into your personal finances, and so I know at a similar time that Profit First was released, there was another book that was released called The Barefoot Investor, which is basically, it's essentially Profit First for personal life. That, like, it's just, it really makes planning things and getting, setting up your accounts and having like allocation for investments or property or savings or whatever it might be. It just puts things in like this level of polarization over everything, where you can kind of really see and plan properly. Like, this is a real big boy conversation, but it's actually quite easy to set up. Like, it's if a chipmunk like me can do it, then most of you guys for sure would be able to do it. But like, it just gets you thinking the right way, and like you said, it's like, oh, okay, well, I do want to buy this thing. Can I afford it? Well, let's check. You go and check. Yeah, well, actually, I can't afford it. Great. Then I'm going to get it, and there's no there's no gray areas. It's like, you can, you can't. Funds are allocated or they're not. If they're not, how long will it take? You can tell that with your forecast. Like, it just brings so much transparency over everything.
And the whole system is, one of the things I hear back sometimes is, oh, that's too complicated. That's going to make my bookkeeping really confusing, or I don't have time to do that. When you set up the system correctly, like it literally will
saves
take
you hours.
Hours. And like for example, for me in my business, I do my allocations weekly.
Yeah.
I can literally do that in less than 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Like way less than 5 minutes.
Find me another financial model where you can get all your finances done that quickly. Like it's once you've got it set up, it couldn't be easier.
And it's actually, when set up correctly, it is no extra. Well, I lie. It's probably about 10 seconds extra work for your bookkeeper a week. And it's no extra work for your accountant when done correctly. So that's one of the things I hear. It's like, oh, my bookkeeper or my accountant says no, all those transfers, that's going to be a disaster. Yeah, it's a disaster if you don't set it up correctly. But if you set it up right, it's literally, as I said, no issue for your accountant and probably 10 seconds max a week for your bookkeeper.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've never had that feedback from my bookkeeper, but I suppose it is a lot of extra accounts. We won't go into the semantics in how the models or how it looks. You guys go read the book and find out more about that. But I think like one of the big things that I suppose a lot of the guys out there, like going back to that whole conversation around, well, everything looks fine at my end, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And just it's what do they say? The biggest enemy of a great life is a good life, in the sense that you can sort of pull up stumps and not actually progressively want to learn how to do things better. And there's definitely better ways to do things better,
One thing I'm noticing at the moment, I mean, obviously we've had a really good run in the trade space with work. I'm hard pressed to find any trades business that is not run off their feet or very close to. But the problem I'm seeing is the large majority are still not improving what cash they have in the bank.
Exactly.
So my question is, what comes up must go down, and it will come back up again. I'm not doom and gloom, and we can make the most out of a downturn. But don't wait for it to slow down so you've got time, because you're going to be on the back foot. Like, now is the perfect time to get started and start implementing just step by step and profit first. So when it does slow down, you can actually work less and make more money. Have less work and still be making the same or more than what you are at the moment. I was just talking to a one-on-one client of mine this morning who he's only new to me, hence why he just spent the weekend really quite sick, because he'd been running himself into the ground. That happens so often, and it doesn't have to. Like, if you have really got your financial foundations in place, if you've got your bookkeeping sorted and profit first sorted in your business, you can make a much better decision on whether I'm going to take on that job or not, because you know your numbers and you know what you're going to make out of it, or what the potential to make out of that is. Not, I've got to take it, I've got to take all this work on because I've got all these bills. You know exactly, if I take that, yes, that's going to be good for the business. Or actually, I can turn down that job because I know it's not going to be good for me from a financial perspective. I say to all my clients, I would rather you stay home and go broke than go and work your butt off for 50, 60, 70 hours a week and go broke.
Yeah.
The end result is the same, except when you just stay home and go broke, at least you'll have your health. Because if you work all those hours, you're going to damage your health. And for many people, that is irreparable. And that is not what I want. I want all my clients to have their health and their business to be profitable. And it is totally, totally doable.
So one of the great things as well, like I must say about this whole model is, I mean, even the name of it, as it alludes, profit first. Like, you're basically setting your business up so that it's profitable, and there's a profit allocation there, and that profit, you can do what you want with it. But at the end of the day, I mean, part of the book, you're encouraged to go and use some of that profit as a reward for achieving something within your business. Now, Craig, who's my profit first consultant, he was busting my chops lately because he's like, what have you done lately to reward it as a reward? And I was like, well, nothing really. We have 2 small kids. We don't go out for dinner. We don't do all this stuff. Yeah. And he's like, hey, the profit's there for you as a reward. So recently we just booked this trip to Mexico, coming up in January, and the business has paid for it. So like for you guys out there that are thinking, oh, wow, we'd love to have, we'd love to be able to afford to go on a holiday or something simple. Like if you employ a model where you've got that allocation set up, then it's really easy. Like that was the easiest thing in the world. I just said, well, the money's there. It's there to be used for that. We might as well use it. And we have, So, and the other great thing I love about it is the ability to sort of be in control of what you get paid, and you can see with transparency that if you do these things and you're bringing this much more work, then your pay can go up by this much. And we're very lucky as business owners to be in a situation where we can make those decisions, because you can't do it really in a job. You can't just say, well, I want to make an extra $100,000 next year. Like it's next to impossible. As business owners, if you've got the right model in place and you can actually see how it's going to look and what you need to do to get it, you can reverse engineer the whole thing. And it's so refreshing when you've got that perspective.
And Profit First takes you from being reactive in the business to proactive. So like you mentioned there, if you're paying yourself 70,000, let's call it a year, but you need 100,000 to be able to meet your personal goals, you can plug those numbers in and go, right, if I'm taking 100,000, then I need to do this much in income and real revenue and so on. And you can reverse engineer it rather than, I'm just going to go out and get more jobs, or I'm just going to take on this big job, or whatever it may be. You can be much more strategic about it, which is, again, much more efficient, much less stress. And you can then see the result. It's like, if I do this here, then I'm going to get that, rather than just kind of hope for the best.
And I will say, like, jumping back to what we were talking about earlier about having the right people in your team, that is one of those situations where you do want to make sure that you've got the right people in your team, because, just by wanting to add, whatever your financial goals are or personal goals are. So, I mean, typically, and you would see this more than anyone, I'm sure, but, it's very common for us as business owners to, at the end of the financial year, give our accountants big high fives for enabling us to pay as little tax as possible. Of course, when you go to the bank and you want to get lending, what's the first thing they look at? So, you've got to make sure that the people that are in your corner from a financial point of view, they understand what your goals are. Because if you do have a goal to, say, purchase a property or invest in stock or whatever it might be, you're going to have to justify that, and you're going to have to make sure you're paying yourself enough, which I hate to say, it means you're going to pay more tax, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
So you've got to get the right counsel. Otherwise, you will come unstuck a lot all over the place.
And that's why when I talk about your financial team, it's really important that we know what you want, and also that can change as well. Like, a lot of people I find with setting goals, they're either, I'll never reach those, or, I'm not really sure. Things change too often. I'm not going to bother to set anything. Set them anyway, because in the example of lending, in many instances, a lot of lenders will need 2 years worth of good income. And so to just say today, I want to buy a property in 3 months' time, that's going to be really, really difficult. But if your financial team knows that you want to buy a property in 12 months' time or 2 years' time, then everybody can get on the same page. Everybody can do their part in their process to make sure that you've got the numbers that you need to be able to buy that property. And again, it's all about being proactive and forward thinking. And when I work with clients, we spend a lot of time on goals. So business goals, but mostly personal goals, because for me, our businesses are here to help us achieve our personal goals. Rather than our businesses dictate to us what our personal goals can be, we want to do it in reverse. We want to know what our personal goals are and then build our business so it helps us achieve those things, not wait to be given whatever our business can afford to give us. So, no. Let's make that sucker work for us and give us what we actually want. But that does mean spending some time and effort in actually sitting down and thinking about what those goals are. Is it a holiday overseas? Is it a lap around Australia? Is it property? Whatever it may be. And that's one area that I see people don't spend enough time on, is their goals.
And the big one is time, how you wish to spend your time. So if you look at, a lot of the conversations that we have with business owners today is about how they can buy back some of their time through their business, which typically comes as a result of putting people in places or filling boots that they're currently filling within their own organization. But if you don't have clarity around, that fund allocation and when you can afford that person and at what point in time, then it makes it very difficult, and it kind of makes it a bit of a guessing game. And we often see businesses that have employed people, and I've done it myself numerous times, I should add. I've employed people where, we just couldn't at the time. We thought we could afford them, but we didn't because we couldn't because we hadn't modeled it properly. Whereas now that we've got the process in place, like we know exactly at what point in time we can hire. Like it's all part of our recruitment schedule, and like it's all dictated through profit first and our allocations. And we just know that there's money going to be there at that point in time. And the team knows too, because I say to them, listen, I know you're busy, but until we hit this point here, we can't hire anyone else. So these are the reasons. And then it's like, okay, well, there's clarity there. Like they understand it's justified. So again, like if these sort of conversations are, things that you guys are sitting there going, oh man, I would love that. It's actually not that hard. Like
No.
it's like most, and you talk, about like the goals, how goals and things like that change. Like my experience with goals are they very regularly change, because once you set the goal and once you strategize and reverse engineer the steps to get to it, you'll get there in most cases twice, if not thrice as fast as you ever anticipated in the first place, which means you've got to go and reset everything. So it's, which is not a bad thing, So, 10-year goals are almost like we're constantly updating these things because they're forever changing,
And what I find is with goals is people feel like that they can't achieve that first one. And then once they do it, as you say, earlier than they expected, and then the next one becomes a bit quicker. And then it's like, oh, it becomes normal. I can just, if I want to, spend $25,000 and take my family to Disneyland tomorrow, I can do that because I've got funds aside, or it becomes much quicker. And what I find is the goals become larger once we start achieving them, when we realize that we can do it. And it's just about, we gain confidence in knowing that the work we do within our businesses is the outcome is actually happening, not running ourselves into the ground and still not getting where we need to be. And as you say, they can happen quite quickly.
I don't think I've ever, in truth, I don't think I've ever set, even to this day, set a 10-year goal that was big enough. Like when at the point, like when you set it and you think this looks good, and then you go and reverse engineer it, you guys will be absolutely flabbergasted at how small the things you need to do are in order to get you that big picture result. Like it's almost so small it seems insignificant, but it's that whole, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time sort of situation. Like if you want to add an extra $1 million of business to your year, to your $1 million worth of revenue to your business each year, like if you reversed engineer that, you'd be amazed at how many little things you have to do, or how much extra dollar value each truck you have has to bring in order to achieve that.
Or even, and what I find with goals like that is we often think about how much do we have to increase our revenue to be able to achieve those, which is absolutely part of the process. But often we miss the piece where how can we be more efficient in what we're doing already? How can we be more efficient in our expenses already?
Yeah.
And that's one of the key pieces that I see get missed. And when we start working on those, clients are like, oh, okay, because often, and that's where you can hire people faster. It's often not because you're increasing the income. It's often a combination of both, and that you're becoming more efficient with your existing expenses and more efficient in the business, and that then allows you to have that leap. It's often forgot. Reviewing your expenses is not super sexy, and people often gloss over it, or like, we've done our expense review. When I work through it with them, they're always surprised, like, oh, we only did that 3 months ago. I can't believe you found 5, 10, 15, 25,000 plus worth of expenses in the year that are actually just not necessary.
Yeah. It's a big thing. I'm to this day, like, my Profit First consultant's got like a great dashboard set up, like using tech and everything, and you've probably seen it. But all the expenses are listed there. So we have a lot of software overheads and things like that. And in truth, some of them just don't get utilized, but they're all there. They're all, my Xero accounting is all up to speed in terms of the allocate, like the chart of accounts and things like that. So it made it very easy when he imported it. But I was like, oh, what? I don't need that. I haven't used that in 2 years. Like, you just start scrapping things, and all of a sudden, like you say, you've saved yourself 25 grand a year in software subscriptions and just stuff that if you didn't have it laid out like that in front of you, it probably would have just kept going on, under the radar.
Yeah, I had one client who was really resistant to the expense review, and he's like, I've done it, Katie, it's done. I'm like, okay. COVID happened the first round, and he had to have an operation on his wrist. So he's like, okay, I'll do it all at the same time while work's a little bit slow. And then I get an email back from him, and the subject line was, I'm sorry. I thought, it's a bit strange. I opened it up, and he's like, I've just properly done the expense review, and apart from other expenses, he said, I just found a like $72 insurance monthly amount for a car that he had sold 5 years ago.
Oh my God.
That was still coming out. His insurance company were kind enough to refund 2 years worth, but he was like, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I'm like, yes.
I believe it. I believe it.
And that's a real common one, insurance of a car that has been sold or that type of thing. But until we actually look at it, we don't pay any attention to it.
So anyway, I'm sure we could talk for days and days about these sort of things. I suppose as a starting point for you guys out there, like what we're talking about here, it might sound complicated, but it's not. It's actually really simple. But you just need to get the foundations laid and take the first step. So I really encourage you guys to take the things that you've heard here. And if any of the following things sound like something that you would like to have implemented in your business, I encourage you to go reach out to Katie and have a chat and see how they can set that up for you guys. And certainly go read the book or listen to the book. If you don't want to read, then fine, listen to it. I don't really care. Just get on the same page, because it's very hard to sort of it's hard to sort of go into the details of how Profit First works if you don't have a basic understanding of what it is. But anyway, if you would like to have more clarity around the numbers within your business, but not just the numbers, like the specific department related numbers. So where money is available for things like your team or your subcontractors or whatever it might be, what allocation is available for you as an owner and for your owner's pay, and what allocation you might have available to spend on things like business related expenses, and to always make sure that there's always enough money in your account for tax and anything tax related. Like if any of that sounds like something you'd like to have rolled out in your business, then the good news is the Profit First model does that. Pretty easy to set up. If you're like me, you just go and get someone like Katie to fast track it. But again, I can't encourage you guys enough to go check it out, because it's been an absolute game changer for my business, and in truth, for my entire life.
Yes.
So I'm going to put some links to Profit First for Tradies in the show notes, and I'm also going to put some links to the Amazon to the book, the Amazon link in the book, the Amazon book in the show notes. So go and check that out, guys. Get hold of it. Start reading, start listening. Katie, thank you so much again for your time. Is there anything that you want to close off on?
I just want to say, make a start. Ask the questions. If you don't get an answer that you feel like is right, ask the same question to somebody else. Reach out to me, happy to have a chat. I'm happy to point you in the right direction if I'm not the right person for you. Reach out in Matt's group, but just start the conversation.
Yeah. And I'd encourage you guys, if you are going to do your research on this, go and speak to people that are doing it or have done it, so you can get the truth. Because like, I don't go and ask my parents for financial advice, right? And I wouldn't go and ask someone who's been divorced for marital advice. Like, go and speak to someone who's actually got experience with it. Because your mate who runs a great business or whatever and is doing real good stuff, like, probably has no idea about Profit First. So go and find out the information from people that actually know what they're talking about in relation to this stuff, and it will serve you very well. All right, I think that's enough for me. Thank you once again, Katie, for your time. Look forward to chatting again in the future.
Awesome.
And I guess that's a wrap.
Thank you.
To get notified of our upcoming videos and podcasts, make sure you hit subscribe and you ring the notifications. Please, if you enjoy this podcast, I'd love for you to leave some comments, give us your feedback, and if possible, please give it a share with somebody else that you know would benefit from this conversation.